Hello, and welcome to our next episode of Taking Flight. This is a very exciting panel. It's all focused on media design, and we're going to do a wonderful portfolio showcase with a bunch of our panelists. And they're all graduates of our media design MFA program here at Full Sail. So very excited to see all of you guys here today. I'm going to start by going through all of our panelists. We have Julia Royal and Cam Wilde. They're actually graduates of our media design program from 2017, and now they're partners at LM. And what's great is they met in this program. So as our media design program, and they are doing some really fantastic things since they're actually getting married in 2 weeks too, which is super exciting. So I would love for us to, Cam, would you like to start us off? Cam, go ahead and tell us a little bit about your background and experience, and then we'll go to Julia. So Cam, go ahead and take it away. Oh, we're missing some audio, I think. Hold on one second.
My fault.
Oh, no problem.
Yeah. I'm actually in career number 2. I was originally in the Air Force, GI Bill, school, all that stuff. But a lot of times while I was in the Air Force, I was doing kind of part-time hustle of more self-taught graphic design and stuff. And then, fast forward and did the bachelor's program with Full Sail, and then later on worked for an agency for a little while, and then did the master's and met Julia, and we struck out on our own after that. Our work is kind of focused on more municipal and nonprofit work throughout mostly New Mexico. We do have some clients that are more corporate in the East and within New Mexico, but a good 75 to 80% of our work is nonprofit and more government related.
Wonderful. And how about you, Julia? Tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, so I actually started in retail. So while kind of doing that in the mall scene and all of that, I was part-time, kind of same story as Cam, self-taught, and was doing flyers and logos for the local music scene. And so I got really into design for packaging for music and posters and things like that. And I decided to make it official at some point. And so I went and got my bachelor's, and then fell in love with it so much that I wanted to dig deeper. And so went and got the master's at Full Sail and enjoyed it so much, and met Cam. And then we just decided, with our joint experience, that we would go out on our own. And yeah, it's been great.
That's wonderful. And I can't wait to show off some of the work that you've done. We did a brief overview. I went through some of the assets we're going to be showing today, and I'm just so impressed with all of these panelists and what they're working on. Michelle, let's do an introduction for you real quick. This is Michelle Ducayet. Did I pronounce that right, Michelle? Correct me.
It's Ducayet.
Ducayet. It's such a beautiful last name. I apologize for messing that up.
Thank you.
She's the founder of Twist 180 Creative. She's also professor for the Miami Ad School. She's also the senior creative director for SPHERA, and she's a current student in our program, which I'm so excited to show off her work, because she's not only a student currently, but she has 30 plus years of experience working in her industry. So it just is a great testament to how continuing your education can kind of help you elevate your skills and kind of push you in the next direction and grow and have growth, right? So Michelle, I know we have an example to show for you of some of the work that you've been working on, but tell us a little bit about your background and your experience, and speak to the example we're going to show.
Yeah, so I went to art school a long time ago, before computers were ever around, and then kind of worked through the computer era through big Fortune 500 companies, doing annual reports to doing traditional marketing materials. And then owned my own businesses, went back into corporate America, working for some large corporations, Newell Rubbermaid, Cox Communications and such, and then decided to get a master's when I was about ready to retire. And I think my master's was really because I wanted to teach. and I wanted to expand my opportunity in the teaching realm within the university system. So Full Sail really offered the opportunity to manage that while I was still working.
That's
And then
wonderful.
this is, yes, some of my work that I've done most recently. So,
And it's beautiful. And so are these examples that are from your portfolio that you're working on for school, or these are your actual like company
these
examples?
these are company examples. These are examples I've done at Cox Enterprise for the last about 10 years. So my
Amazing.
school portfolio is a little interesting because I probably wouldn't use my school portfolio because I've already been in the business for so long.
Sure. Sure.
So it was more of an exercise in practice and an exercise in getting back to the basics and learning the business than really trying to amplify my portfolio.
Wonderful. And Cox is a huge company, so
Yes.
you've definitely worked within the corporate realm as well, which is really exciting. Although you own your
Right.
own company now, which is super cool.
Yeah. So
So
I've done all across the board.
that's great. That's great. Cool. Well, next up we have Sheroma Hodge. She is the president and founder of the Brass.Angel group. She's also a 2022 grad, and what a little known fact about Sheroma, she's actually representing Full Sail this current year for Graphic Design USA as a student to watch. So that is really impressive. Sheroma, share us a little bit about your background, your experience, and I know we have a visual example to show as well of your portfolio.
Sure. So it really started with my love for photography as a kid. And to supplement my photography, I kind of started teaching myself graphic design. So during my senior year in high school, I opened Photoshop for the first time. And I basically sold my first flyer 2 weeks after seeing that nice gray, interface for the first time. So the rest has basically been history for me. I have over 20 years of experience as a creative, working across several industries, including communications, broadcast media, PR, marketing, and design. Currently, I focus on photography, media design, brand development, and content marketing management. Doing my master's at Full Sail really reignited my love for design and just kind of like reminded me why I started doing this in the first place.
That's wonderful. And what great examples. And I'm so glad that you're representing us with Graphic Design USA. So that is a really, really great accomplishment. So we'll just jump right in with some questions. One of the things that all of you have in common is that you're all entrepreneurs, in addition to doing design work. But as we discussed a little bit before our session started, all of you have also worked for companies as well. So you have kind of the experience having, both working within teams, but also going off and doing your own thing. So could you tell us a little bit about what made you decide to go that freelance entrepreneurial route? And we'll start with Julia and Cam, if you guys would like to speak to that first.
You want to go?
You go.
Okay. So I know factors for us was location. We both had that experience working in the agency setting, and I think just us working together, we just realized that we clicked creatively, and so we just thought we would have a more fulfilling career, kind of figuring it out on our own. And it was once we kind of figured out, hey, we do have between the two of us have enough clientele and that base, that foundation to build from there.
Also, I think it's more efficient. We feel faster and more efficient. Is less meetings. I mean, we do have a lot of meetings, a lot of Zooms, a lot of stuff like that. But it's all so contained, and there's no commute, and then there's no morning talk. We do a weekly check-in every Monday morning on the business side of things, and so I feel like we output a lot more and a lot faster, but still taking the time to do our due diligence. But it's just more efficient.
That's wonderful. And how about you, Sheroma? What's your experience been like as far as starting up your own company?
I felt like the freelance route offered me the creative like freedom and flexibility that I always crave. It also allowed me to work on diverse projects and like really truly hone in my skills. Larger organizations tend to come with, established guidelines and certain things that I find can be very restrictive for creative. And so freelancing has given me the space to innovate and push boundaries.
That's awesome. And how about you, Michelle? Tell us a little bit about your experience, because I know you've been working with very, very large
Yeah.
companies, and now you're doing your own thing.
So I would kind of agree with both of these guys. I think for me it was the ability to touch so many different touch points versus in a corporation you've got a lot of layers and you have to work through those layers. When you are on your own, you have the opportunity to pull a lot of different skill sets. You can do design, strategy, marketing, social media. You're kind of the one who's the one wonder of the project. And I think for me that's where I needed to tap into that in order to feel like I was making an impact for a business and making an impact for a company. Also, too, the production and the output was much faster, much quicker, much more concise, and a little less frustration.
That's great. We're all going for less frustration in our lives, that's for sure. So one of
Definitely.
the things that's unique about all of these panelists is that Julia and Cam actually work a lot with nonprofit organizations, with government and municipal type organizations. And then Sheroma works with companies that are kind of mid-size. And then we've got Michelle, who's working with like Fortune 500 companies. So I would love for you guys to quickly share what are some of the biggest hurdles, the challenges, like how do you see your day-to-day look different, being that you're working with these different types of organizations? And we'll start with Julia and Cam. We'll start with you guys sharing a little bit about maybe some of the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, right? Like of working in that arena. What are you dealing with over there?
We have been extremely fortunate in that we actually, one of our primary contracts is with the New Mexico Economic Development Department, and through a sub-program, New Mexico Main Street. There's a Main Street America, and then each state has a Main Street program. And they accredit and assist nonprofits that are about downtown historic revitalization throughout the state. There's about 31 of them. So basically, we are at the beck and call for any design work, any marketing kind of work that all these nonprofits have. And they don't have to pay us, but the state pays us. So it's a win-win. And so they get free services from us, and usually not long-term, more project-based. And so we're real fortunate to be in that kind of arena where everyone wins. What the challenges that come with that is, one, in their eyes, we're kind of working for free, and so there's always a little bit of a challenge with that. Just the general attitude that kind of can come with that, and the education part. We have to do a lot of front end education because these folks, a lot of them have strengths in other areas and maybe not so savvy on branding and marketing and things like that. The wonderful, absolutely wonderful part of it is such varied projects, from events to organizations themselves to the very small startup businesses that come up within these districts. We have the opportunity to help them sometimes, and it's throughout the state. And we get to see our lovely state. We drive all over the place. A lot of windshield time, as they say. And New Mexico is not the biggest state, but it's not small either. So we drive a lot and get to visit a lot of communities.
Yeah, and I say a big opportunity in general is that, aside from the nonprofit part of it, is the government part of it. These people have money that they have to kind of get out of their pocket when a new fiscal year comes. So there's always opportunity for, we did with New Mexico Arts, their Poetry Out Loud project, and we got to do a bunch of social media videos and graphics for that. And it was just because they needed something to push over to the next fiscal year so they can get money again. So Yeah.
then a lot of nonprofits, a lot of folks shy away, especially when they're shy away from nonprofits. But a lot of nonprofits have money to spend,
Yes.
and they have to spend it, and they're looking for ways to spend it. So
Nice.
whenever a nonprofit gets a huge grant, a lot of times they got to find ways to spend that money. So if you're at all interested in nonprofits, definitely look into it. It doesn't mean you're not getting paid.
Yeah, it sounds like there's some definite benefits to working with nonprofit organizations, so that's great. I love hearing that perspective. Sheroma, how about you? How does it differ for you, like working with small to mid-sized companies? I would assume that you're not guaranteed steady work like they are, because small to mid-sized companies may not have the budget, right? So how do you see it different?
So for me, working with SMEs, I enjoy that I get to usually communicate with and collaborate with like the decision maker or the person that's in charge, which lessens a lot of the time taken to normally make decisions and agree on
Mhm.
certain things. Of course, like you said, the challenge is usually they don't have as big budgets, especially when it comes to marketing and creative. Usually that's like the afterthought of a lot of companies on the smaller end. So I would say that's where it's most different for
Mm.
SMEs.
Yeah, interesting. And what do you have to add, Michelle, about working with some of these larger corporations?
So I think on the opposite end, the challenge is coming in there as a smaller company and not a large agency. So
Mm.
not like an agency like Pentagram or anything like that. So it's really trying to prove your value, and that you don't have to have 100 different people working for you and be this top kind of agency that bills out at 1.5 million or whatever, and that you can bring just as good value to them. And I think where that has come for me is just the contacts I've made in corporate America, and how those contacts then pull me through as they move on into higher jobs or more executive positions, how they then remember how I performed for them, bringing me along that journey with them. So that's a little bit of the networking is very important in that case.
Mm. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, it's almost like you have to prove your skills and that you follow through and all of those things. So that's wonderful. It's about building those relationships, which I believe is probably true for all of you, right? Relationships are important. So I want to jump into the portfolio side of things. I'm so excited to show off some of your work here. Before we start showing some of that, one of the questions I have for you, for any media design student who's looking to build a outstanding portfolio, what are some of the key design elements? What are some of the elements that you would say help somebody stand out as far as having great work and a great portfolio? And I'll allow any of you that want to jump in first to take this. So
I would say storytelling, the ability to do different types of assets. So I think one thing that's great about the Full Sail Master's program is that honestly, I'm not a video individual, and I had to learn Adobe After Effects. I had to make a commercial. Those were
Mhm.
new skills after 30 years that I hadn't experienced. I think having that breadth in your portfolio um, does help in going out and looking for jobs, and just having the skill sets to mine different areas of the creative field.
Wonderful. Anything you would like to add, Sheroma or Julia or Cam?
Ye- Yeah, sure. I would say that your portfolio should not only showcase your skills, but also like your unique style and approach. For me, I consider that I have OCD, so I like a lot of like clean lines. I follow a lot of grids. I like spacing in my work. And so like, a lot of people know me for my more cleaner aesthetic for a number of my designs. And so I think your style and your approach should also be very representative in your portfolio.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I also think just showing your process and how you think through solutions, and taking them step by step, how things came from the brief from the client to final product, and how you thought about things going through.
And definitely don't show anything that you don't want to do in the future.
Oh, that's great advice. Yeah.
So, I mean, we've dabbled in video, but we're not going to put it on our portfolio because no thanks.
Yeah.
It's something that I think we can do, but it's just not something we're interested in doing in the future. So we're not going to show anything. So
Yeah. That makes
I think it's kind
sense.
of a promise that you're making
Right.
to a potential client. So
Yeah, absolutely. That's great advice. So one of the questions I have for you, and I know we have an example that Julia and Cam have provided. How do you strike a balance in showcasing your diverse skills, but also maintaining a consistent style within your portfolio? And I know the visual example we have are of some logos that you guys have created. So we'll go ahead and put those up if you guys would like to speak to that.
we kind of have a philosophy is try to have a lack of style and let everything be informed by the brief. These are samples of both municipal and government organizations. I mean, we do a lot of for-profit companies and things like that, but yeah, these were all driven by the needs of the community or the program, or yeah, I guess when you look at it from a 10,000-foot view, there might be a little bit of a style there, but we like to think that we go into it with
informed by data. Everything's informed by the words that they say, the adjectives that they kind of put forth, and it's just us being able to tell that story visually. So our style is kind of informed by our clients.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and those are beautiful logos. You know, one of the things I love about this degree program that we're featuring today is the design element. You know, I'm a visual artist myself. I have a background in art. I think if I were ever to do another degree, which I have no intention right now because I just finished one degree, but media design would definitely be one I'd be interested in. And what I love about your logos is that they're so beautiful. I mean, they're very colorful, but you can see consistency through your visual eye of like that they don't, while they all are informed by someone giving you a directive, there's definitely your own personality and your own sense of design that is seen consistently across those logos. So it's wonderful. Really great work. Sheroma, you have some examples here to show too, and this is of a website portfolio. So we'll go ahead and put that up real quick. And can you tell us a little bit about this example and how you're showcasing your skills, but also maintaining consistency in your style?
So for me, for a long time, it's been a really big challenge because I've done so many types of assets for so many different industries. And so I just have to figure out, okay, what are the best representations for different styles? But at the end of the day, like you can see a lot of alignment and positioning. I use a lot of rule of thirds, which comes from my photography background. And these are the things, the elements that are very consistent across a lot of my work. And so while there's extreme diversity in the assets themselves, they still have like this united like grid and flow about them.
Yeah, very nice. And I love seeing your work. Such great visuals. So very nice. Next, I'd like to have you guys share a little bit about some tips on curating a portfolio that effectively communicates your unique design approach and your personal brand. So, Michelle, I know we have an example here, the design pickle example our production team can put up. And can you tell us a little bit about how you have effectively communicated your own design approach and personal brand through this example?
So through my experience with corporate America and working with clients, there's a lot of opportunity. You have to do pitch decks, right? And so you have to do big strategy decks. You have to walk them through the rhymes and reasons of doing stuff. Then you have to execute the creative. So when I do my portfolio or I think about the assets I'm working with, I don't want to have to redo stuff. So anything that I'm doing for and sharing with a client that would be in the format of a PowerPoint deck is then going to show up on my on my website. So you can see on this particular execution, I've got three different chunks, big chunks. One is like an overview of make work for you. That's kind of the strategy statement. Then I've got the execution, which is in the middle, which is more of social media. Then the last one, which is more or less an event and how to bring an event to life. Those are 3 different components that would be featured in a PowerPoint to share with the client. I then can reutilize those and put those together in a long format, scrolling format for my portfolio. And so I don't want to have to redo my work. I want to be able to use the work that I'm sharing with the client and getting the client to sign off on in different configurations. So that's kind of how I go about it. It's not, I guess I would say the smarter way to do things is the simpler way to do.
That's wonderful. I love that visual. Very cool. Sheroma, let's talk a little bit about your portfolio reel. I know we have some examples to show as well. And tell us a little bit about these next visual examples.
Like Michelle said earlier, it's really about telling a story and like finding the best pieces to kind of help bring that brand story together. That's really what I like to focus on when I'm putting these things together, to really like look at the brand and the energy and the different elements that, you know, speak to the story at the end of the day. So that's what I go off of personally.
Those are beautiful. Very nice. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about target market. You definitely have to be aware of your target market as you're developing a brand or creating visuals along those lines. Tell us a little bit about how you create a portfolio that engages specifically with the target market that you're going after as a designer. And anyone want to speak to this first? Any volunteers? Don't all jump at once. Yeah,
I'll go
Sheroma, go
ahead.
ahead.
I usually have like a very in-depth consultation with my client to really assess what their needs are, what their pain points are, look at analytics and feedback to see what's resonating with them. And then, you know, use language and visuals that really speak to their needs and desires, for the people that I want to attract. So it's a bit of research, it's a bit of data, and it's a lot of conversation to really get into their minds and see what they're looking for and if these are the right people, that I can serve.
That's wonderful. And that's a great answer. So I'm going to go on to our next question from there. So as you guys had mentioned earlier, it's all about storytelling, right? So design is all about telling a story. And I'd like you guys to talk a little bit about how your portfolio tells a cohesive story about your design journey, your skills, and the value that you bring to clients. And Julia and Cam, you have a visual example. And they'll go ahead and pull that up. Can you speak a little bit to how you've incorporated storytelling into this example?
We had a lot of stakeholders on this one. Not even in the meeting, there was a lot of since this was for the city of Tucumcari, as you see, but there was a lot of groups of folks that really had a interest in the project and that needed to be represented somehow in some way. And
So yeah, it was kind of in the case study, in the portfolio itself, kind of going through who those people were, not only the stakeholders, but the people in the community, because they in theory want to adopt and feel attached to this
and
mark.
represented.
Yeah, and represented. So we have the people that are into Route 66, we have the Native American community, we have the Latino and Hispanic community, people into cars and like hot rods. And there's little elements throughout this logo that can speak and communicate to all of those people. And it's 9 times out of 10 going simple. But those things are communicated in the case study, and that in a portfolio helps people to see, hey, they think about all the stakeholders, they think about the people who are going to see this thing. And so telling that story really helped kind of show our process and the value that we bring.
And on the release of the project, we actually took that education piece a step further and talking to the city manager and talking to the powers that be, so to speak, we developed a rack card that basically explained all this, told the story of the logo and stuff. And so that went out to the whole community, and it immediately got more buy-in from the community once they understood what they were looking at. Kind of, it wasn't telling them, it was just suggesting.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it was really successful in that sense because we were so transparent of what we were doing, what we were symbolizing, and how it all came together. So
that's really wonderful. I love that you incorporated so many different aspects of the city and what, the way of life there is all embedded in that logo. It's really impressive. That is so great. Sheroma, let's show an example that you have here, and tell us a little bit how you use storytelling through your design.
Okay, sure. So my final project for my MD MFA master's was like a huge experience for me in terms of starting with an idea and starting with some information and being able to build an entire story and an entire brand from that. And I think it was so invaluable that I actually ended up using this process while I was graduating, and it was just amazing. So basically, having the Las Vegas Enforcers, that was the brand that I chose to create. Understanding the research that was given with the audience and just building upon that to create something that would resonate with sports fans and people that like color and excitement and adventure, and using so many different assets to cater to everyone within that, mugs and caps, jerseys and t-shirts, because a lot of the sports experience is that pride representing that team or that state or whatever it is, that town. And so I wanted something that was bold, that represented that energy of sports fans, and was able to just create this entire experience that had a website, had marketing materials, promo materials, stuff that you can wear, stuff that you can shake. So it was a really awesome experience.
Yeah, and it's beautiful. I love the colors that are incorporated into it, and all those design elements and how consistent it looks across all the different products. It's very cool. So I would like to ask Michelle. Michelle, we have an example to show for you. It's the NADA example. And specifically, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about how you've adapted your portfolio over time to align with different industry changes and trends. Can you speak a little bit about maybe some of the trends that we're experiencing now in the design arena?
Yeah, so both of these that I think you're seeing up here, one is NADA, that one, and then there's another one. But it might have some sound. Yeah, there we go. So I think for me, I worked in a very, very large corporate environment. Trade shows are very, at least in the automotive industry, are huge. And how can we take, in this case, I had 8 different brands that had to come to life within one cohesive space. So looking at things that are being done in the industry outside of just the normal industry. So I look to the sports industry, looking towards the sports arenas that have those 360 surround kind of environments, and suggested bringing in a 360 halo kind of pavilion effect you can see right here.
Wow.
For this company to tie all the brands together, then working with external agencies to make it feel cohesive, to tell a cohesive story, but also to have our individual brands showcased. And I think for me, I didn't stray away. Now, I had never done that before. I've never done, digital media to this extent, but knew what the sensation could be if you created a cohesive feel like what you would feel in a stadium, and felt like that could be a really unique execution. So through a lot of exploration, a lot of partnership with a lot of different agencies out there, we were able to sell in a very, very expensive, large trade show that made some really amazing impact. And that's how I pushed my portfolio beyond just print into a digital space.
Wow. That is really impressive. And those visuals are just incredible. And to have the opportunity to work in a trade show environment like that on such a grand scale is really, really cool. Another example, and I have to apologize to our production team because I went a little out of order here. We have another example that you wanted to share with the Earth Justice. Can you speak a little bit
Oh,
about that as well,
yes.
and some trends that affected this campaign?
So everyone knows AI technology is here. It's probably going to stay, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how do we, as it's just so when I came out of college my first year, computers weren't around. So I had to learn computers. And if I was to be one to say, oh, I'm afraid of the computers, they're going to take my job over, I probably wouldn't be where I am today. So I took that same sensibility and that same inclination with AI technology. And how
Mm-hmm.
do we leverage AI technology as creatives, as a tool, not as a replacement of us? And in this case, for this campaign, I wanted to showcase screaming animals that couldn't have their voice be heard, but I needed a consistency of animals to create. And if there's next photograph will show
Mm-hmm.
a series of animals. I took that to
Wow.
AI technology and developed those series of animals with tags, impromptus, and everything, and then did the illustration of the type inside of them. So, while this is produced by AI technology, the imagery it's also manipulated by myself at
Mm-hmm.
least 30 to 40%. So, is that any different than being experienced by or influenced by other creative out in the industry and how much we have to affect it? This sped my process up like intensely fast. I was
Yes.
able to iterate really well, but I was also able to create a cohesive brand of imagery, which sometimes is very hard in stock
Mm-hmm.
photography or being able to get out there and take a photograph yourself.
That's so impressive, and I love that you're finding ways to incorporate AI into your work, but you're not claiming it as your own, right? It's like you're
Yep.
manipulating it enough to where it's still your design work. So that's a huge trend that's happening right now, and it's really impressive, and I love that you've embraced it. Sheroma, we have some examples for you to show next, and this specifically speaks to how your design work can be incorporated across many different formats, from digital to print and more. And this is a great visual example of how you've done that. Can you talk a little bit about how you present such diverse work within your portfolio, and what this image means to you?
Sure. So I usually require, if it exists, to have like a brand style guide or a brand book to work with so that I can understand the brand at its fundamental level design wise. And then from there, it's usually a combination of their established brand and my style together. I'm fond of doing a bunch of different assets. I love to see a brand in every possible, um, you know, iteration that would be beneficial to the brand. And we're in a highly digital age, and so there's so many more options now to create different types of assets for brands. So I do enjoy going both, digital if there are tangible options for that same brand with Antigua and Barbuda. I've also done stickers and banners that they've put in physical places. So it gives me the opportunity to work with brands that have established brands, but to still put my style on top of it.
That's beautiful. What a beautiful example, too. That's great. So one of the things I think that many artists, designers, they struggle with is getting feedback sometimes on their work. And so I would love for you guys to talk a little bit about how feedback is so critical to your growth, and how incorporating feedback from your peers and mentors and clients really helped enhance your portfolio over time. Cam and Julia, would you like to talk about that first?
Well, we're kind of in a graphic design desert. As far as a peer-to-peer, personally, I mean, there's a few designers locally that are not too bad, and not to toot our own horn, but we're always on the lookout for peers to share our work with. And we recently got a fun little piece of advice from a friend on the East Coast, right? He's over there.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of what we do is branding these small businesses and branding organizations and even to cities, and something that we've incorporated not so much in the portfolio. We're not going to say this literally, but through that education piece of talking to clients but it is a little reflective in the portfolio and the storytelling, is that the logo, you know, it's kind of our bread and butter, but it's really, in the grand scheme of things, unimportant. You know, when you know, it's when we talk to the clients, and what we try to tell in the story on our portfolio is that's just kind of the starting point. And the point that our buddy Jordan made was, have you ever purchased a product or a service based only on the logo? I hope not. You know, and really, and we talk a lot about the connection that's created with the audience between this symbol and the services or product or experience provided, you know. And so it's kind of, it sets realistic expectations on, you know, you're in it for the long term, and you're going to build this, you know, kind of thing. And it kind of helps us and them get through that logo process and then move on and understand that the picture is a lot bigger than just a logo.
A lot of people get stuck on the logo, and it has to encompass all the things, and it has to be all the things, but there's so many more touch points to a brand than just the logo.
So, and we hope we reflect that in the portfolio. To answer the question directly, we try to tell that story in that way. And that bit of feedback was really great, you know.
Yeah. I think that's great feedback. And I love how you have taken so many different aspects, specifically in the last example that you showed, where it was like you were telling the story of the town, you know, and all the things that represent it. And it's not just the logo. You have so much more that goes into that, you know, and it's great that transferred over. Michelle, how about you? How do you incorporate feedback into your portfolio and your design work?
Yeah. So that's a great question. I love feedback. I think
Great.
feedback is essential. I specifically garner feedback from my peers, but I think mostly where I get the most influence with feedback is from my counterparts. So my marketing or brand directors or the CMO, those that are outside of the creative world, but yet have a creative vision or a creative thought process, because sometimes they have the nuggets of the ideas that then allow me to bring them fully to life. So NADA is a perfect example. My brand manager and I both had the idea of the surround LEDs, and really worked together throughout the process to bring those to life. And I think without those partnerships, my work would be a little bit flatter and a little bit like only artistic versus hitting the strategy and hitting the client's needs. And I think I leverage my counterparts for that are maybe not in the creative industry.
Wonderful. Great example. Sheroma, how do you incorporate feedback into your work? How do you feel about feedback?
I love feedback. I think feedback is essential. A lot of the times we've been taught to think outside of our own thoughts and our own head and our own biases. And so feedback kind of opens that door to get different perspectives, and to see, you know, the impact on the audience, and, you know, learn ways to be able to tailor and fine tune based on that feedback, because ultimately you want to have the best design possible, or you want the function to be achieved as designed. And so feedback allows for that.
That's great. Wonderful. So in addition to being great designers, you guys are also entrepreneurs, and I would love for us to talk a little bit about the business side of things. So running your business, like what does that consist of? And are there any type of strategies or insights that you've kind of gathered over the years of having your own design business? And Cam and Julia, you have an example here, the Wilde Divide. And tell us a little bit about the business aspect of how you have navigated things.
Well, we specifically threw this in there just as a sample of having to be a little thick-skinned. This has never seen the light of day so far.
Oh,
We got
wow.
paid for it. It was this huge, it was a
Like a
county,
regional.
yeah, regional kind of tourism, it says New Mexico, Colorado. And it was this branded effort to northeast New Mexico, southeast Colorado region. It was really spearheaded by the northeastern county. And things like this happen, and we love it, and we think it's a lot of fun. It met the brief. They bought it. As far as we got paid. But there it sits on a shelf.
Oh,
That's
wow.
that's part of the work. They may incorporate it someday, but you just have to understand that it's a lot more than just you and your design. Maybe they lost some money, maybe got some money got shifted over for the marketing campaign they were starting to put together. But still, you look at it as an entrepreneur. It's like, it's still something we love as a portfolio piece.
Yeah,
and that's totally
absolutely.
fine. And we had that agreement with them. Can we put this out? And they said, yeah, absolutely. So sometimes it's a little disheartening when you kind of let it go out in the wild and you don't have control over it anymore. And it doesn't get used, and it's a shame. But there's many other reasons that it could be. It has nothing to do with you. And so a little bit of thick skin on that entrepreneurial side, yeah, that whole deal. Anything to add?
Yeah, on the business side of things, I say be realistic about your time frames, your turnaround time, and just be very upfront with any prior engagements or like travel that you may have booked in, because a lot of times people can work with it and you don't have to kill yourself trying to meet these crazy deadlines sometimes. So
Yeah, we're very transparent. We like to think
Mhm.
we tell them we probably give too much information to our clients, but yeah.
Oh, that is such great advice, because it's so hard, especially I think when you put so much time and energy into developing a design and then it's not used, like, not to take that personally, but sometimes things are just business decisions and it has nothing to do with like the effort or the time or even your design, because your design is absolutely beautiful. It just has to do with whatever business thing or, whoever's in charge over there, or whatever could be going on. There's a number of different things, but I'm
Right.
glad you got paid for that.
Especially in local governments.
Yes. There's a lot of politics, right? So,
Absolutely. That has played into our work before. Yeah,
yeah.
definitely.
Well, it's wonderful, and that's really great advice too, Julia, from you on deadlines. How about you, Sheroma? What advice do you have from a business aspect of how to manage clients, how to manage your business?
I would say a bit of an advice would be that not every potential client is for you. You
Mm,
should understand your client's process and see if it works with your process for achieving the same goals. And sometimes it doesn't align, and so you have to know, okay, am I willing to take on this stress or not, with this particular client, because they do things differently, or they're not good with suggestions and they want to do this super ugly logo and I don't want to do the super ugly logo. So, yeah, not every client is for you. Understand their process and whether it works with yours, and if collaboration would be a smooth and seamless process.
Great advice. And Michelle, last but not least, certainly, do you have
Yeah.
any advice from a business side?
I think it's get your contracts straight.
Mm-hmm.
Get your nuts and bolts down. I think we as creatives, sometimes that's the more challenging thing. I know that I teach a couple business classes of how to do contracts, how to scope your work. I think then also too, from a you have to give your work up, right? You're going to give your work over to the client, and you have to be okay where the work is going to go and how it's going to be executed out. You don't always, as a entrepreneur, have that luxury of following it through, which is very different than corporate America or
Mm-hmm.
working at an agency, because you see the life cycle of a project from start all the way to finish, and then probably again at the onset of when they refresh it. You don't always get that luxury within a entrepreneurship or within a small business, right? They may need to move on, or just like, they may close shop, your restaurant may close down, and you don't see where that goes. So I think having understanding of that, and just knowing that that's not a result of the performance that you did, it's just the nature of the game.
Yeah, that's great advice. But one of the things that stood out to me is Sheroma's comment about not every client being for you. And this next question, I know, Cam and Julia, you have another example to show, the brand rack. And tell us a little bit about how you balance your creative vision with meeting your clients' needs, and how this, how is it reflected through your portfolio? In this case, I'm sure you had some great clients that were awesome to work with, right?
We won't say there's one of the four here that was a little challenging. We touched on it earlier. These are samples of basically just very short, in a nutshell, logo explanations, of what these are, for Santa Rosa Main Street, for Truth or Consequences, New Mexico, for Raton, New Mexico, and we saw earlier Tucumcari. And it's just been a valuable, we go through a process with a committee or a small group, and they learn a lot about design. They learn a lot about branding. They learn a lot about, just your basic logo rules, designing in one color, and all of these different things. But, with these kind of organizations and municipalities, they want their public to like it as well, the stakeholders, the shareholders. And so, even though most of these clients have been wonderful, there's still that additional challenge, because we warn them, we could do the best thing in the world, but when you put it out there are going to be some people that hate it.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's try to, it's just the nature of the public, it's just people. They fear of change, or for whatever reason. So we put together these rack cards. When we tried it out the first time, actually with Raton, we tried it the first time, and it was really successful. And the local public that want to get behind this flag, so to speak, really appreciated the additional output of education and explanation on, this is why this represents you. And because they may not see it, because they don't have the design sensibility or whatever.
And they weren't in the meeting, so
and they weren't in part of the process. So
Mm-hmm.
now they kind of feel, it kind of builds a little tribalism. They feel like an insider, like, I know why this is the way it is and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So things like that work. So our challenge is not so much, to answer the question, our challenge is not so much our clients. Most of our clients are great and they're easy to work with. But it's because of the nature of our work, it's the public that's the challenge, basically. Mm-hmm. So since there's such a high visibility in a local area. So.
Well, I think the public should love your designs, because they're all beautiful. I think you did a great job with it. So we have just a few more examples to show, and then we're going to wrap up for today. So this next question is related to, how do you maintain your design integrity while delivering on client requirements? And we'll start with Michelle's example here. Michelle, tell us a little bit of how you've stuck to your own design integrity while fulfilling a need for your client.
Yes. So this is a perfect example of what we just talked about with Cam and Julie. This was a project that was asked of us to do. We came to the briefing, we set up brainstorms of how to name the company, how to bring the visuals to life. We set up touch points, recaps, get the strategy down. Then we went into creative execution and really knew what we wanted this brand to come like. It was a holding company for a couple gaming organizations that in Atlanta.
Nice.
Once we pitched it, the owner of the industry said, no, I don't want to change it. I want my name to be this, and kind of, just dissolved it. We had to say, this is where we decided to walk away from it and say, okay, we don't agree with what you want, your vision, and our research and our strategy and all of the business acclimate that we've put behind this doesn't agree, and so possibly we're not the right fit for you all. And that would be this situation. Whereas the design is top notch, I think it's spot on. It meets the objectives. It meets all the strategy that we've talked through our master's program of the storytelling. But yet the client just had a very specific idea that wasn't addressed to us in the beginning. So we had to move on, and the fruition never came to life. So I think that's how it is. I don't take those out of my book. I leave those in my book because I still think that you've done all the work. You've produced all the work. And in this case, we're one part of the partnership, right? And sometimes sides of those partnerships fall apart or miscommunication happens.
Yes. And I appreciate your honesty. And I love that you include, I mean, you put all the work into that design, and it's gorgeous, you know, and it's wonderful. So there's no reason not to hang on to it or to showcase it. Cam and Julia, tell us a little bit about your experience working with, this is Raton, correct?
Raton, yep.
Raton. Okay. I want to make sure I pronounce that correctly.
Oh no, it's difficult to pronounce. They will correct you every time.
I feel like there should be an accent over the O or something. I don't know.
It's rat tone.
Oh, rat tone. Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
It's tough. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, for this one, a pretty small community in northern New Mexico, and we did go through a few iterations here, but talking about maintaining that design integrity for such a small town, they got custom type and they got custom patterns and icons and things like that. And it was important to tell the story to make sure that everything kind of gelled together. So yeah, I think that helped a lot with the buy-in, was telling that story so that
educating up front.
Yes, lots of education up front.
We were working with the city council members. We were working with city manager. We were working with a couple of organization leaders, local leaders, tourism. And you know, this is a tiny little town on the Colorado border, you know, on the New Mexico side, and there's just not a lot of great design sensibility there. It's the nature of it, you know, and so that education piece of really hitting it hard on this is what an effective logo can do. And this is because I think they went in thinking they were going to get something else, and you know, maybe a little kind of stock kind of thing. And so really educating and explaining, and we've heard it, this was years ago, and we've still heard from them to this day of like, oh gosh, you guys taught us so much, and we saw this other town's logo and it was terrible, you know, or whatever, you know, so proud of ours, and check out our swag and all that stuff. So really keeping that integrity, the design integrity was keeping it in, maintaining that was really important to educate the client first.
Yeah, it's very fun for us to like feel like we're design fairies and we sprinkle like a little design throughout the state. And so hopefully it'll make a difference.
Yeah. Exactly.
Oh, you're educating everyone. I love it. That's wonderful.
Right.
That's great. Sheroma, let's show your example and tell us a little bit about how you've maintained your design integrity while working with clients.
Okay, sure. So for this particular example, I was working with Caribbean Posh, which is a Caribbean brand that has a magazine. They have online and print. They also do events and, you know, different things with their website, lots of content with interviews and celebrities that have, you know, Caribbean backgrounds and ties to the Caribbean and stuff like that. So for this event, that was an annual event that they do, you know, it's an established brand. They already have their colors, they already have their fonts and their style. So on the flip side to Cam and Julia, where they were doing the education, I was having to learn about the brand and you know, their image that's already established and out there, and you know, having to keep their style but still be able to manipulate it to a point where I felt satisfied in, you know, the output and that it was serving the purpose that was intended. So that's how that one worked for me, particularly working with an established brand that already has their look and has their audience and has put out so much already, in keeping with what they want, but still feeling that satisfaction professionally that I've done what I was supposed to do and represented their brand and kept it consistent with, their image that they already had put forth.
It looks so nice too. I love those tropical plants and the way that they're incorporated into the design. So nice. So I have just loved seeing all of your work. You guys have done such an amazing job, and I really appreciate you guys taking time out to like share with our students and potential students here today a little bit about design, and what great examples. It's amazing. I have one last question for you guys before we wrap it up today. What advice do you guys have for any like emerging designers or freelancers who are looking to build their portfolio and establish themselves in the media industry? And Cam and Julia, would you guys like to go first on this one?
Yes. So our advice is to niche down, but don't feel rushed to. Your portfolio is a living document, and you can change it, you can update it, and let your work, your real world experience kind of inform where the demand is and where you want to go. So
especially where you want to go.
Yes.
And back to that earlier point, don't show anything that you don't want to do in the future, so.
That's awesome. Very good. And how about you, Michelle?
I would say don't be afraid to explore new avenues.
Okay.
I think we all have to evolve as creatives. We all have to tap into different industries to stay relevant and to grow and to stay current throughout the years of our careers. So at least for me, being able to tap into different technologies, use different technologies, not be afraid of different avenues of creating opportunities for myself has created longevity. So I would say, while you want to create a niche, you also have to be open and willing to explore new opportunities that are set forth by the demand of our audiences.
I love that. Always being open for growth and trying new things. That's really great advice. And Sheroma, tell us a little bit about what you have for advice for our watchers today.
I would say be true to yourself and your personal style. For me, I pride myself in being a Swiss Army knife for marketing and creative teams. I love being multifaceted and being able to create a wealth of different assets, because you never know which one of those asset types will really capture the attention of a potential client. And so while I understand, selecting a niche and like being a master of that area, I like being having diversity in my portfolio and the projects that I work on. I like working on different types of assets and in different industries, because each brings new challenges, but then new opportunities to, explore and push the envelope. One thing I've always been taught in design is you have to understand the rules to be able to break them. And so having experience in a lot of different areas lets you bend some of those rules, albeit knowing what they were in the first place, to really manipulate them to serve the design purpose. So that would be my advice. Be yourself. And for me, that's being multifaceted.
I love it. That is really great advice. I am so grateful to all four of you today for sharing your time, your beautiful examples. I think this was probably one of my favorite taking flights, just because I love all the visual examples that you guys shared today. I think that it's going to inspire our audience, and I would like to thank all of you. So Michelle, Sheroma, Cam, Julia, I really appreciate you guys being here today. And I want to thank all of our viewers for tuning in and watching. So I wish you guys a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Take care. All right. Have a good one, guys.